Ministère d'Amouette. Monsieur le Président du
President of the Committee of the Regions, the Vice President of the Parliament. I'm delighted to be here this afternoon. I was told that every time I appear in public, I should say I'm delighted to be here. It's rarely true, but this time I can tell you it is, because we're going to be talking, I do hope, about the future of Europe, the future of our regions, cities, villages, and the future of the European Union. And all of these are inseparable. I have to say something now. I'm here, I've got lights all over the place, but I can't see you. So if anybody is inspired and could focus on the room. Ah, great, now I can see you all. Thank you. You're beautiful.
Do it. I have to do it again and again, but English is not the only official language of the European Union. And as things are as they are, I will express myself in French, maybe in Luxembourgish, but by respect for the public, I will concentrate on the French language, because apart 500,000 Luxembourgers, nobody is able to speak Luxembourgish. But we had, as Luxembourgers, to learn the languages of our neighbors because they refused to learn ours. And so we tried to be as fluent in French as we are fluent in German. La Commission.
Now, the Commission, which I preside over, launched in 2017 a lengthy debate on the future of Europe. And we carried out that debate and continue to carry it out throughout all of Europe, because Europe isn't just Strasbourg or Brussels. Europe is each and every one of our cities and regions. I even had the opportunity to take part in citizen dialogues. The Commission organized 1,000. Number 1,000 took place in Freiburg, in the Black Forest in Germany, a week ago. And the more I take part in these citizen dialogues, the more I realize that citizens like to be heard. We don't listen to them. We don't listen to them enough. They don't listen to us enough. Therefore, we need to develop among European citizens, or between the citizens and the institutions, ongoing, permanent dialogue, including sometimes tricky explanations. In Europe, there is an increasing number of Eurosceptics, skeptics, and they tend to be promoting skeptical opinions, but I think we need to talk to them. And I would like to distinguish between those Eurosceptics who have questions to ask and opinions to make, and also those stupid populists. It's not the same thing, but I'll say it here, and I've said it elsewhere. We need to distinguish between those stupid populists and also the nationalists who have an opinion to put forward. Listening to European citizens from the south, north, east, and west, I realize that our citizens who love Europe, or who look kindly upon Europe, would like us to note the fact that they love their territory, their countryside, their traditions, the diversity that makes the wealth of Europe. And that is why I say time and again that we can't conceive of Europe without nations and territories. They're not just an invasion of history, they form part of history. And we shouldn't give the impression that we want to replace nations with the European Union. Nations and the European Union go hand in hand. Blaise Pascal said these things go together. Nations, regions, European Union. The three go hand in hand. And that's what the task force I implemented under the presidency or vice presidency of Timmermans on subsidiarity does. The group has issued its report, and the Committee of the Regions contributed to it with the assistance of Mr. Lamberts and our colleagues Schneider and de Kort. Within a few weeks, during the meeting that we're going to be having in Austria, the Commission needs to take a stance on the different parts of the report, and the first Vice President, Mr. Timmermans, will be doing that. I won't talk about it today, although I would like to say that I agree to a large extent with the comments made by the Bureau of the Committee of the Region on the 14th of September. I generally support what was said by the Bureau of the Committee of the Regions. But above and beyond the need to deal with the specific nature of individuals, we really need to do more when it comes to organizing cooperation and cohesion among ourselves. Without cooperation or cohesion, economic and social, nothing will be possible in Europe. The European Union is the virtuous intersection between local, regional, national, and continental. They all go hand in hand, and I'll give you an example. Climate change and environmental transition. It's all of Europe, in fact, that is involved in that transition. It's not an easy one, but it is absolutely essential. Individuals want to produce their own electricity through renewable energy. Micro-enterprises, major industries place environmental transition at the heart of their strategies, and European cities have for a long time been pioneers of a different way of living. The action of our cities and our urban communities, where 70% of Europeans live, is essential and it's irreplaceable. Between now and 2030, cities are going to be contributing about a third to CO2 emission reductions in the European Union. And I should like to applaud the remarkable work carried out by the European Convention of Mayors, which has inspired the rest of the world. And we can be proud of that, because now there is actually a World Convention of Mayors. The European Commission is here to support all of these efforts, using everything available to us, so that we together, Europeans, succeed in carrying out that transition towards an innovative economy which is more respectful of our planet and also a source of social progress. Obviously, we do that through the cohesion policy, a major European solidarity-based policy which will remain, and Corina Cretu has taken on that responsibility with a great deal of talent. Also, for the 2014 to 2020 period, we have allocated 18 billion euros of structural funds and European investment to energy efficiency and 6 billion euros to renewable energies, particularly in building and housing, which represents 40% of European energy consumption. Furthermore, 40 billion euros from the European Regional Development Fund were assigned to research and innovation. Between now and 2020, this money should help 15,000 companies to produce or commercialize new products, support 140,000 startups, and create 350,000 jobs. Also, what was called the Plan Juncker at the time. We don't talk about the Juncker plan anymore. When we launched that plan, it was criticized, and it can probably still be criticized. We launched it in 2014. There were people who thought that the failure of the plan would be comprehensive. It was called the Plan Juncker. But since it's not a failure, we mobilized some 345 billion in investment. Now it's called the European Strategic Investment Fund and not the Plan Juncker anymore. But it's exactly the same thing. And it will continue to be activated when there is a need. The same applies to the European interconnection mechanism, which contributes to a large extent to the development of sustainable transport in our cities and regions, with 18 billion euros already committed for the benefit of railway and navigation sectors. This all shows how present Europe is in regions and cities, close to our citizens, even though sometimes I do regret the fact that it's not visible enough, because often national leaders make projects that are co-funded by Europe appear to be the fruit of their own imagination. The same sometimes applies to the action of leaders in our regions. There are lots of things in Europe and in our regions, our cities as well, that wouldn't have been possible if the European Union hadn't lent an active and positive hand to the development of projects agreed upon. Therefore, without wanting to teach any lessons, as leaders of cities and regions and urban communities, sometimes you need to insist on the fact that everything that you do is done well, but sometimes you're helped out by the European Union, because that will show the citizens that Europe is present when it comes to promoting ideas that you might have dreamt up. That is why we prepared the budget for 2021 to 2027. And I would like that European budget, and I know the majority of you don't agree with it, because the cohesion policy appears to you to be not enough. But the Council and the Parliament need to agree before the European elections in May 2019, because this budget isn't just an accounting exercise. It's the future in figures. And if we look at the financial prospects for the 7 years to come, we're talking about the future. We're not just talking about budgets and accounting. In this budget, which we have recently submitted, the cohesion policy plays a leading role, because the cohesion policy continues to be important. We're assigning 373 billion euros. They will be invested over the 7 years to come in all of the European regions. Unlike what some people asked me, I decided together with Corina not to exclude those regions that are richer than others from these funds. I don't think that we can penalize those who do better than others. Nevertheless, those who do better than others, those who are richer, because the results of the cohesion policy can be seen, perhaps they perform better they have to understand that reductions in loans are going to have to be made. I'd also like to say that I read carefully what you and some other people say about the cohesion policy, regretting that the amounts are slightly less, between 6 to 10%, according to our calculation methods. We have a choice. I had a choice. Either we don't include in the budget the new policies, or we share between all the needs, and therefore we're going to have to cut or make cuts which will be seen in the future. We've got new priorities that we're going to have to include, and we're going to have to think about those: migration policies, defense, new European policies, increased effort when it comes to research and innovation, more money for young people in Europe, therefore a substantial increase in the Erasmus programs. So either we stick to what we've got, or we include the new policies for the future. If I had stuck to keeping the old policies and including the new, we would have about 1.4% of the European GDP in terms of expenditure, and even the European Parliament, which tends to be more ambitious than other institutions, decided to limit the 2021 to 2027 budget to 1.3%. So there was no way of doing two things at the same time. To continue with the policies and add the new ones. Now, urban development, sustainable urban development, continues to be a priority for the Commission. 6% of the envelope of the European Regional Development Fund will be put into investment in sustainable urban development, because the majority of our citizens live in an urban setting. Therefore, we have to focus on that. But don't think that the cohesion policy is over. The cohesion policy, economic and social, which was established in the 80s by Delors, is going to be focused on in the coming decades. Now, you're in Brussels, you've come from all corners of Europe, and often you feel as though you're alone. You've been left alone in your work. But I'd like to tell you that we've been very careful putting forward our budget proposals for the future to modernize the cohesion policy, to simplify administrative tasks, to enable local officials to focus not only on the formalities but also on the content of the projects. I was a prime minister, and often I abandoned projects that were co-funded by Europe because sometimes there was too much administrative burden. So let's be reasonable and let's cooperate. Thank you.